So, welcome back to all who are joining us today for this talk. First of all, thank you for being here. We're very excited to carry on with the remaining part of today's day. And we have some really interesting lineup of talks coming up. So, the session we are having now is with Suzanna Vock, and she is the founder and has been running this wonderful initiative about sustainable fashion festival in Switzerland, but they're also doing this in Paris recently. We have some more information about Susanna on our website, but you must also check out her website, on GWAND, which I believe you will be able to find on Google. The topic we will cover with Susanna today is vintage reselling and upcycling. All we need to know about the second life of luxury goods, how is it better for our future of the planet going forward. So I'll start, Susanna, with a little bit of intro about what what according to you is sustainability in the luxury space, and how you feel that luxury brands could do things that are more sustainable by default.
I think sustainability and luxury, they go very well together, actually, because actually luxury can only afford people with actually some money. So it means to me that sustainability is also a luxury in these times. If we know that a dress or a garment or a bag is produced fairly, everyone in a circle is paid well and fair, and the use of materials are rather resought, maybe to take materials that are already on this planet, they're already affordable, maybe some stock of companies or some stock of the company itself, or like second-hand or like vintage stuff reused, or of course the material which is sustainable and also treated sustainably. So it means that the leather, for example, is not with a lot of toxic, is not prepared with a lot of toxic, because it's possible to do this in actually very sustainable and natural ways, or that the material is really comes out of a healthy circle. That means there is no, when it's planted, it's organically planted, not with a lot of toxic toxic instead of produce. It's I cannot find the word in English now. I'm very sorry.
No problem.
But it means actually to for the big companies to see what is possible in those days. So it means if they have a big stock, that they maybe redo some stuff or change or use elements, or if they don't have that, they really develop materials they are responsible, who are responsible, and not only in a sense of material, also in a sense of treatment of the workers who grow these materials or who work on these materials.
That's great. That's great. I think I totally agree with you. And I'm sure anybody who buys luxury product is fully aware of the fact that luxury products are made to a standard that it lasts longer, that it's got nicer materials. And if it was a material that was, durable and fair to the planet as well, I think it makes sense to pay a higher price. So I suppose
Exactly. it lasts longer, and also it's important actually that the customer knows where it was produced, which people worked on the product, that the transparency is much, much more discussed in a fashion business instead of producing expensive products and pay low uh, low salaries.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important because this still exists as well. It's the other hand, actually.
Absolutely. We were just talking about transparency in a quite a lot of depth in the previous session, and it comes across in the conversation over and over again that the consumers of today wants to know everything, and not just because it's luxury, but in general. Even if you're buying a bottle of milk, let's say you want to know what was the journey and what kind of impact this might have on the planet. So I think definitely luxury brands could set the stage for how things are being discussed, and oftentimes there's a trickle down effect, isn't it? When luxury brands do something, a lot of brands try to incorporate those things within their the products and the way they converse as well. So definitely agree that sustainability and luxury are by default close to each other. But although we are also looking at luxury products that are probably not the most sustainable, if you're talking about the mass-produced luxury goods, such as
Exactly.
we can talk about sunglasses, perfumes. The component of sustainability is not really spoken about.
Exactly.
I think
Exactly.
there could be room for.
Exactly. That's how I see it as well. And I think, I'm sure that luxury brands will win if they are transparent
Mhm.
and if they try to go these ways. I'm very sure, especially in this time where consumption uh, is forbidden almost
It's
in
true.
in a lot of countries. So we have time to learn about this at this exactly at this moment.
It's true. It's true. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think although we are having these discussions about luxury, we are actually currently standing in a very crucial time and very unique time in a way that we've never faced this kind of a challenge in the past ever in our lifetime. Our parents'
Exactly.
generation probably have seen wars, but we've never seen a curfew almost of, being banned from going to the street because of a virus. So I think, we have a lot to learn as human beings, but also as businesses, as to how we can better prepare ourselves for the post-COVID era, where we would be, speaking to the customers in what's real and so forth. So I think, obviously, when we speak about sustainability, I think part of the discussion always happens to be that increasing the life of a product, and how can we increase life of a single product, even if it's changing user. So I think that's where vintage and upcycling and recycling comes into play. Um, would you tell us a little bit about vintage, Susanna, and how you see vintage playing a role, in the way consumers are buying product, or maybe having going towards a more circular way of consuming?
Okay, I think vintage is actually at the moment, luckily it's trendy.
Hmm.
Many it's bespoken at the moment. There
Hmm.
are many people, they start to like vintage. It
Hmm.
gets another image than before. You see like really styled vintage shops, even
Hmm.
online you can buy vintage.
That's
But I think also, I mean, you have to be careful in, if you take weight and your figure is changing, you can't tell anybody, okay, you have to keep your whole clothes for the next 20 years. But in my fault, I'm lucky. I never gained a lot of weight, so I still have garments or clothes when I was 25, 26. I kept them. And I have also sold them already like 10, 15 years ago.
hmm
The clothes I didn't like anymore, I sold them to other people, or I give them to other people. I think it's about the behavior, to love the dresses. And also it's about maybe for this generation especially to be authentic. This is a bit gone, you know. With vintage products, you can be really, really authentic. You can be really, really authentic. And you, because mostly of the vintage products, no one else has it. So
Absolutely.
uh, I think this is one interesting reason why to buy vintage. And on the other hand, what is gone in our society is that that we that we sew a button, you know, we throw it away when a button is missing, or if it is broken someplace, the garment, we throw it away. This is the behavior of this society. This is the behavior of this society, and I think this is one part to learn, like a young generation, to be very creative and very to be very creative. I'm sorry, to be very creative and to be very, you know, very that you start to think about your clothes and to change maybe your clothes, you know, and not only to buy to keep it like 2 weeks or
Yeah.
to buy, you know, to throw it away,
Certainly,
you know.
certainly. I think, Susanna, what you're saying is that um, I think, especially the younger generation, the millennials, the Generation Z, have been introduced to a lot of throwaway fashion, and maybe some have been exposed to, product that can be thrown away because it misses a button. But also, there are some customers you see here in London that, on the street, have combined things from wonderful vintage brands, or brands, their vintage collection, like a YSL jacket that's from the 1970 or 1980, kind of combined with something that they bought from a high street, and combination with something that they bought, from Amazon. So it's
Exactly.
bringing together eclectic pieces, and, innovating and showing yourself as an individual that doesn't buy into a specific look for a specific season. And, I think innovating, or, being creative, is what everybody has within them as individuals. You don't have to be a fashion designer to be creative. I think every human being has that in them. So to really go out and find things, be it from a vintage shop, be it from a flea market, be it from, you buy something from eBay and you make it tailored to your size and it perfectly fits you, and things like that are possible. And I think, that's probably a good sign that we are seeing. um, would you say, Susanna, though, that in, let's say, previous to millennials, do you think the concept of vintage was not very popular? Because you mentioned that as something that's becoming quite popular now. How was it before? Like, do you reckon it was not something that was quite well accepted?
It was not, in some scenes, it was popular. I think in the scene I was, or with the people I was, the artists and like designers,
Mhm.
it was quite popular. But for example, there was another scene there it wasn't popular at all. They looked at us a bit as we were like freaks or like very special people. But I grown up in Switzerland and
Yeah,
not in London. And
yeah,
London is very different. London always was a melting pot. London always was very inspiring. There was the underground. I was already a lot in London in the end of 90s, 2000. Many, many creative people. this is very different. Here where I live, all the young people, they look the same almost. There is not so much individuality
Mhm.
as you see, for example, in London or in Paris or in New York. Because in these cities you have much more of these creative people, and it's much more important to be authentic because there is so many people. And here it's much important to be the same, not to shine out of the masses. If you shine out of the masses, it's a bit the Swiss mentality, people arguing about it
I
a
think
lot.
that's there even in London to some extent, and I'm sure even in Paris. There are certain pockets within the city that are more creative in the way they dress. But if you go to
Exactly.
the city of London, where we have the financial companies, everybody looks the same, everybody dresses the same.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I think the vast majority of most cities are actually conforming to this a single way of dressing, whereas there are those creative hubs or creative areas where people are a little bit more experimental in the way they dress themselves or the way they choose their outfits to express themselves. um, but I think, overall, I think there is a role the industry has to play to kind of encourage more creative way of creating their looks, because we don't want everybody to look and behave the same, because we need innovators in the world. And I think how you put yourself together, how you dress is kind of a good start, I think, in expressing yourself. So
Exactly. And it's important. We all need clothes. We can't go around naked. So
not at
it's
all.
not a topic which is so superficial as it is treated.
Not at all.
So
And I think, Susanna, the other thing is when you wear an item of clothing, it changes the way you feel. So if you are walking around in, joggers and tracksuit, you feel a certain way. And then you wear a sharp, tailored suit, you feel a certain way. So clothing actually
exactly.
has the power to transform your behavior to some extent and transform, in some cases, even your performance as a professional.
Exactly.
Um,
That's what I believe as well. That's what I believe as well. And I think this should also be learned, that it is important. It is something that it is something you can gain a lot in a way, not to be dressed like everybody else, that it can be a chance as well to show your colors, to show your authenticity, to show how you are, your creativity. It's a way to play, and especially with secondhand clothing, you don't get that picture. Um, if you buy from an online shop or from a shop, they always tell you how to combine something, how to wear something. But if you
yeah.
go into a secondhand shop or in a vintage shop or whatever, in a brocante, you have to think about it yourself. And I think it's also, even if it is on the outside, it's something um, that you have to feel well in your clothing. And it doesn't say that everyone has to be fashionista. It
Mhm.
says that you have to actually wear this, what you feel well. And in concern to secondhand, it's actually that you have a possibility to find stuff no one else has. And this is the part I like, actually, because I think we are a society of copies. And I think we should go away from that. We should go back more to nature and to do what we actually feel. And with the clothes, if people liked it, they can live maybe something where they don't have a chance if they wouldn't concentrate on this. Others, maybe there are artists, they show this in their pictures, or whatever. It can be very creative to get dressed, or to find like an old whatever Versace top for
Yeah.
5 francs in a shop. This
Yeah.
was always a success for me, you know. I
Yeah.
found all these famous labels very cheap here because no one knew what it was.
Right. That's very interesting. I think
Yeah,
what you mentioned about, finding and almost treasure hunting for these unique pieces, I think that's the beauty of shopping because you can't just go into a shop and pick that up. No one can do that, and no one will know where you got it from. So I think that's that
exactly,
beauty of, and how art collectors do. You know how art collectors go hunting for pieces that they want and then they build their
exactly,
collection. I think consumers consuming fashion products should to some extent do that because you want to have a wardrobe that you're proud of and not something that changes every 6 months based on what a high street brand is
exactly.
introducing and all your friends have the same. I think, Susanna, I will share this with the audience and you today is that when one day there was a time when I was looking at my wardrobe. I was maybe 21-year-old or 22-year-old, and I saw most of the things I had were either things I stitched myself as a student or things that that my parents bought me. And it's common for a 21-year-old to have things that are bought by your parents in India. But I thought to myself at that time that if I was to one day have a wardrobe that my granddaughter would see, I don't want to see these kind of things in my wardrobe. I want to see special things, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I think as consumers, we should think about almost your wardrobe as being to some extent your legacy or who you are. So if you were to not be here tomorrow, what does it tell about you as a person? So
That's lovely, yes. I
because
mean, the interesting is also that I remember a lot of things through the clothes I wear before because I kept them so long.
it's
So
true.
almost every dress has a story. So I wear this in Milan when I was there, or in Paris when I was at this event, or at a GWAND event in the past, or I wear this when I got married, or whatever. You know,
It's so
I think
beautiful.
I think it's also that we have to get more connected with everything. It's not only what we wear. I mean, you see with the tribes, they have special styles, they have a special jewelry for special events they do, or events, don't call it events, but their get-togethers, or their yes, events, their parties, their they had always told stories with the clothes. The Indian with the sari, with all these nice colors. Then the Indian, American Indian with the feathers. It
Mhm.
was always about something they want to show, or a status, all the police officer, or it's always to tell something or to show something. It's very direct, actually almost the same thing, the direct contact with yourself or the direct contact with the nature. It's
Mhm.
also you put something over your skin, and if it is produced very unfairly, and if it is used, or if the material is so bad that it itches you everywhere in your body,
Mhm.
I'm sure it's not a good energy on your body, first of all. And
No.
then all the poison or all the treatments these clothes have, especially the jeans, I'm sure this goes up into your skin as well. I'm very sure about that. And I think it's really the time now, especially now, where we can't consume, to get creative. Maybe to start to change some old clothes, to cut. My daughter, she cuts the t-shirts, or
Yeah.
she does stuff as well. Very naturally, she has something and she changes it. And I did that too when I was like 15, 16. I got interested in all this, how you dress and everything. And I tried to be also different from others. So I tried to mix stuff where people also were laughing here in this country, which is not a big city. Maybe in a big city, people would tell me, oh, wow. And it was like that because when I was 17, I lived 1 year in New York, and there people told me, wow, you have an amazing hat on, or your shoes are lovely, or whatever. And here people were just like staring at me, and they probably thought she's completely nuts. But it's a form of expression, and it's
Absolutely.
very direct because it's on your body.
It's true. I think, you know, the concept of laughing at people, I think that should change in the next generations, because we should never judge people by what they're wearing, and everybody has a freedom of choice as to what they're
Exactly.
wearing, as long as they're doing it in a way that's, you know, that's respectful of other people. But you know, I think the freedom of expression is so important, and I think if you start sabotaging people at let's say at a young age because of what they're wearing by looking at them and mocking them, I think you are stunting the growth or creativity of the people. I think, and as a
Exactly.
generation, we cannot afford that. So I
Yes.
think I hope that will not be the case in the next generation, or is not the
I
case
hope
any
so too.
longer.
I hope so too. Definitely.
So, so talking about, you know, the next generation, Susanna, I mean, you know, I growing up have seen quite a bit of vintage and, you know, secondhand. Although it's more popular in London than it is in India. I think in India, people don't really wear secondhand clothes. They probably are too, um, they are a little bit like, you know, if you are doing well in life and if you have the possibility to afford new clothes, you shouldn't wear secondhand clothes. But it might change in the current times. I'm talking about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But in
I
London,
think I think in India it's a different topic,
mm,
especially for the people which don't have anything. That I mean, it's very known that all these old clothes of us, they go, as I know, to Africa and probably as well to India,
mhm,
and they are sold as well there. And it's like it's not very respectful. I understand that this country want to wear something new, maybe even something new they have produced in their own factories. I
mhm,
understand this very well. And then it's also a question of state. I mean, here I see this, it's a phenomenon that, for example, people, they lived in poor countries before or in a war, and they made money in Switzerland. They want to afford things. They want to buy things. They want to consume because they couldn't before. You
mhm,
know, I think it's very dangerous. I think in the Western part here, this behavior is very important because most of the people, or many people, they have a life full of everything. Here in Switzerland, people have 3 cars, people have houses, people earn a lot of money, and you know, they can afford everything. They can go shopping every day, and they don't have to think about themselves.
mhm,
Money is a very important tool in this society. So it's more important than spirituality, than belief, than doing what you like. If it gets money, it's okay. So I think in poorer countries, it's still different. And there, I understand that people which can afford something, they have, they would like to do that because they saw that in our society. And for them, we are a role model to them. For them, I mean, here it was the same. You know, if you went to a bank meeting with a bank and you told them, oh, I have a second-hand dress, I mean, they wouldn't they wouldn't think that's so great. They would say,
Mm.
oh, why you don't wear a designer's outfit, a new one from a designer?
Mm.
Time have changed, you know. I think
Yeah.
we realize all this mass production, it's a problem. We realize that now as well in this crisis. We realize that we have to be more, also more human, you know. We cannot just buy stuff and don't know where it comes from, because people will start to questionnaire that. With the food, it started already. And I'm sure if we do enough PR for sustainable solutions in a whole garment and clothing industry, I'm sure that it will change as well there, because it's all about talking about this, and it's all about spreading it. But and you have to have an audience who is listening to it, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think it's about that. With the food, it concerns everyone, so everyone has to eat. And
That's
if you can't eat, it's a problem. And if you can't eat well, maybe it's a problem as well for your health. But with the clothes, it's no one knows if I wear these jeans, I maybe get sick because of all the poison in the jeans, because no one can prove that. And if you don't have money, you don't buy something new. You go and buy something cheap, or you don't buy anything. It's the two possibilities. And if someone has no money, he goes maybe in a shop and he sees a T-shirt for 5 francs, and for him it's a great deal, or for her, because it's cheap, because he can afford. So
mm,
it's very difficult. If someone has no money to tell him, you have to buy sustainable, then first all the big productions have to close, as it was 25 years ago or 20 years ago. Then we didn't have all these big shops, so it was another price level. Then you bought only 2 jeans, maybe in a half a year or in a year even, and you had only 2 sweaters. And now you have 100 sweaters and 20 pair of jeans.
that's
You know what
true.
I mean? It
That's
it
true.
it changed a lot, and it's not everywhere the same. In a poor country, it's different. In a poor country, all these people, they would like to have something new. I'm sure they're tired of wearing all this stuff we send to them, you know, and we sell to them as well, actually. They don't get it for free.
That's true. That's true. I think
Mm.
things have evolved to a more fast pace, and we lost the value. In the process, we've forgotten the value of good product. A lot of times, because it's cheap to buy, we don't value them enough, we don't wear them enough, and then we get rid of them. And some people go and donate things to charity shops where the product can be used longer by someone else, but in other cases they just throw it in the landfill. And the volume of clothes that us in the UK we throw in the landfill is phenomenal. And
I
it's
know.
almost scary to the point where you don't even realize when you're buying something what its end life is going to be. And you mentioned the skin and how materials can have impact on skin, and the way it's impacting the skin when we throw it in the soil, it even impacts the soil, so it goes back to the
Mm,
environment, which is having a long-term effect in many ways. uh,
exactly. And,
I think.
and, and it doesn't last long. That comes, it's also a fact, you know. If I have clothes or garments from 1970, from 1980, and even from H&M from 1900, maybe 90, it was a much better quality.
Mhm,
You can't compare with that quality now.
mhm.
It really changed. It
Yeah.
got, you know, I mean, I don't say I'm I don't say that it's important that people which are don't have enough money, that they also have a chance to buy something, you know. And I'm always there, you know, because but you can explain to them, look, if you go to a secondhand store or to a brocante and you find something really in a good price there, which it looks almost new, you don't have to tell anybody if it is a problem for you. Just get it there. It's
Mhm.
more, it's just that they understand. If you tell a young person how these workers are treated in India, in China, all over the world, that they die with 40 years because they have to, with the sand, the jeans, I don't know the word in English actually, sand washed, it's called, I guess.
Yeah, sun washing.
And
Yes.
they're all dying when they are 40 years old, mostly because they don't have a good protection, and they all get like a, the lung is going to be uh, really sick after a time doing that. And this is not okay, you know. I think all this has to change. It can't be that we buy something other people have to die for. Only
Not
that
at
they get a
all.
job and that they can eat, and they cannot even pay their slum bungalows. This can't be. And the manager of a company owns millions. For
Yes.
me, this is really a no-go. And maybe, you know, in these times, it will, maybe a part will organically change, because we realize that we have to change now in these times,
Hmm.
because we don't have time to go to the cinema. No, we are not allowed here even. We have to stay at home, and we have to think about the current situation, or we can think about what we buy in the future, or we buy online. But I mean, I think it's quite something for people which are very focused on consumption, this
It's
situation now.
true. It's true. I think we've been forced to get into this place so we can reform and revive everything that we have lost in the way of, running in circles, getting more production, more selling, more revenue, more production, more
Hmm.
selling, more revenue. But I think it's a good pause. I think it's a good pause, and I think we spoke about this in one of the earlier talks, that we need a safe planet foremost to be able to live in. You can have all
Hmm.
the money in the world, all the revenue, and you can be the best performing brand, but if you don't have a safe planet, it's no
It's
good.
not possible, yes. And I think, you know, it's in all industries we have to think about. We have to make new concepts. We have to
Absolutely.
make, we have to come up with new ideas in this time.
Hmm.
And it's not that we just, okay, only the people which try to be more, uh, or not, I cannot even say this, maybe people which already talk about this since years. I mean, I think about this since years,
Hmm.
honestly. And it's
Yeah,
not just since yesterday,
of
but
course.
maybe we can be, these people doing something can be a role model for people uh, doing this as well, then. Because I think you feel much better. You feel much better if you earn your money in a fair way. I think you feel much better if you pay your workers well, if you treat your workers well. I can't imagine that you feel good if you treat others bad and you gain a lot. I can't imagine this. I think it's maybe only a mask those people have, or they are like in some sort of a bubble or in a movie. But I don't think that's human. a
I think
human,
if
you know.
anyone knew about what the real picture is behind the scene for the garments that are selling cheap and the way workers are
They
treated,
would change, I'm
it would
sure.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So I think that's the thing. If we had more transparency about those things amongst these brands, it would be a totally different story. But because no one talks about behind the scene, that's the reason why customers feel like, okay, I can get this and I will get that, even though I will not wear it. And, um, so if we were to look at the bright side, Susanna, I'm sure, we have a very difficult world that needs a lot of changes. Maybe not the term difficult world, but we are in a position where we need to change and we need to do things in a better way. Do you think there is something that brands could do to encourage more conscious way of consuming, or
Of
suggesting how
course.
customers could do things, simple changes that will help them be more
I
um,
think the most simple way would be if the customer, if the producer or the label or the brand
mhm,
would really um, communicate very transparently. That means that they show where they produce, that
mhm,
you can go with your telephone on the etiquette, on the label, and then you get all the informations.
mhm,
And even that they declare everything they can't do. They
mhm.
declare everything they do, but also everything they can't do, because some stuff is not possible. I
Yeah.
mean, with our designers we nominated, if a designer works with, for example, with refugees, and
Mhm,
he gives the refugees a great job and they can live from this money well, but he uses maybe used material from another company which was not produced fairly, it's already, in our view, a designer who goes that way and tries to do a change. And
mhm,
this is also, this gets a high vote from us,
mhm,
you know. And if you have one sequin in your dresses which is not produced fair, or not with a material, or better, it should be produced fair. I think this is very important. But maybe a material which is not sustainable, but on every other part he works very transparently. But he explains, okay, this sequin or this zipper or this button is not a material which is pure nature. It still should be accepted as a sustainable designer, because it takes time for all these changes and a lot of research. And it also need, you also need a network uh,
mhm,
to know where to buy all these materials or
mhm.
all this stuff. If you don't have this, it's quite difficult. So I
True.
think it's important that the fashion community stands actually together and try to change this. Also, the big brands, that they start uh, to 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 implement ideas
Mhm,
as well, which are coming from maybe sustainable designers, to cooperate with sustainable designers,
mhm,
or to be consulted by people who know where to get materials, or and then implement it, develop it, not just talk about it. That's very important. And I think there's so many possibilities. Most of labels have masses of leftovers, and they could really reproduce that. That wouldn't be so difficult. If
mhm,
you have like, I just say something, 50 outfits, all the same, you can reproduce 50 pieces all the same. But then maybe you don't have those masses as before. You then only have like 50 pieces in 5 stores, each 10 pieces. That's just like, to think about how can we use the resources we already have, and I think then it will get also more regional, because it's not possible to do this in a big style, but it's very important that this topic is communicated in a big style to the customers, that the
Yeah.
customers understand this. This is the much bigger job. I think the designers, they will be more and more open to such new ideas. Even the big houses, I'm sure, in those times. But to make the customers understand, because when the customers buy and they see, okay, they buy a lot still, so we produce a lot still. If it's like that, it's like, and if the
Vicious
customers,
circle. It keeps moving. Like if you buy
yes,
more, the brands will keep producing more, and by producing more, the whole thing just keeps going. And they want to increase their profits every time, and they want to increase the volumes every time. So to go into
exactly,
business means to kill the planet at the same time.
exactly. And if they start now to implement new ideas, or like ideas also, they can communicate well, and they can also educate the masses with that, I think, I'm sure that many brands will think about that, especially in this time, because it's a very, very hard time for designers, for small ones, and as well for big ones. For the small ones as well. I hear from designers, they were in Paris and no one came. No buyer came, and they couldn't have the sales they had before. But these are still like designers, they're not big, like Versace or Gucci or all these big brands. And if they don't sell, it's hard for them that they can exist anymore. So you have both sides, actually, You
That's
have the
true.
big brands, and you have the big brands, and it's both sides, actually.
Yeah.
And then the customer is very important, actually, that they know, that they understand, that they start to ask in a store, where is this made? Where this comes from? Who has produced this?
That's so true, Susanna. I think, there are lots that we can do to change the industry for the better. And I think while luxury brands can do a lot of contribution, I think even the high street brands need to do the right things for having a really large scale impact. Every brand needs to, irrespective of their luxury or not, needs to contribute in their own ways. I think that's the only way we can bring, the value chains
Yes,
back to where they should, and create real value for people, and protect
exactly,
the wellness of the planet as well. That's
exactly.
great.
I
That's
think
great.
so too.
So we've come to an end of our time here with regards to the talk, Susanna. There are a few questions that have come through, but
Yes,
we're running almost 7 minutes over time.
yes,
So
I realized that too.
what we will do, we will email you the questions, and perhaps we can relay the answers to the audience afterwards.
Sure, I
Um,
will do that.
that'd be great. Thank you ever so much for joining us today, Susanna. It was
Thank you
so
too.
interesting talking to you, and I'm hoping that the audiences have enjoyed it as much as I have.